Is sugar as addictive and harmful as some of the world's most dangerous drugs? In this episode, we dive deep into the hidden dangers of sugar with Rich Holman, author of Killing You Softly: How Sugar is Killing Us. Rich's journey is truly remarkable. After a diverse career in real estate, mortgage banking, securities publishing, and investment banking, and holding degrees in chemical engineering management and an MBA, his life took an unexpected turn. At age 72, Rich was facing multiple health conditions and was on various medications. As he describes it, he was a dead man walking. Everything changed when a holistic doctor suggested a 21-day sugar detox. Rich embraced the challenge, lost 22 pounds, reversed his health issues, and is now completely off medication. His experience led to years of research into the harmful effects of sugar and processed foods, culminating in his mission to expose the truth about sugar, something he believes is more addictive than cocaine and just as harmful. In this conversation, we explore the history of sugar, the disturbing cover-ups surrounding it, and the devastating effects of the standard American diet. Rich reveals how big food and big pharma influence public health and how government subsidies keep sugar and processed foods at the heart of our diets. We also dive into the experience meeting parents raising sugar-free kids and discuss the importance of ethical marketing and informed consent when making food choices. Rich's passion for educating others is evident, and as a man who's truly transformed his life, his insights are not to be missed. Join us for this eye-opening episode and discover how you too can break free from sugar's grip. You are listening to Health, Happiness, and Planet podcast, where we explore different ways to boost our well-being, live a more fulfilling life, and protect our planet. Join me as I chat with inspiring people and professionals from all over the world, uncovering strategies for improving our lifestyles and nurturing our precious planet. I am Juan, and this podcast is proudly brought to you by Wave Business Excellence Footprint, my digital training company that cares about your career and personal development. I am passionate about making the world a better place, so if you share my enthusiasm, this show is for you. Together, we can steer towards a healthier, happier life while leaving a positive footprint on our beautiful Earth. Join me as we explore how being healthy, happy, and caring for our planet are all connected. Hello, Rich, and welcome to the Health, Happiness, and Planet podcast. It's so great to have you here.
Well, thanks for having me, Juan. I'm looking forward to this discussion today.
Yeah, it's such a pleasure to have people who have gone through certain rabbit holes, and just discovering new things. And then once you discover that, you're like, oh my God, let me go further. And then you go even further and further. And then you suddenly start thinking, okay, this is not one rabbit hole. This is a whole dozen of rabbit holes that you have to discover. So I think that was more or less the route that you were taking, and you're probably still discovering new things. And but before we go deeper into the questions that I have for you today, could you tell us, how did you actually get to this? Because your background is totally different, and then you just got into this by sheer coincidence. So tell us a bit about your story.
Uh, like you, I went on a journey of self-discovery, but mine was prompted by the fact 8 years ago I was dying.
Wow.
I was dead man walking, full-blown metabolic syndrome, chronic disease, and in fact, in my book, I only have two pictures, and that's one of my foot looks like this big, and the other one was normal. But what happened is the doctors gave me what they always do, pills, diuretics, blood pressure meds, statins, all that, that's what they're trained to do. And I just figured, well, I'm dying, high blood pressure, 160 over 100, overweight, low energy, aches and pains, kidney stones, weird things, Bell's palsy, just all this stuff. And I was 72 at the time, and a lot of my friends were dead. So I said, well, I'm dying. But what happened, and I think this is really a miracle, but I read this book by accident almost about sugar. Some podiatrist in the United States was tired of cutting people's feet off, and he wrote this book about sugar. Thought I'd trace it back to that. And the day I finished the book, I took it into my office. And I've never taken a book into my office when I finish it. On my desk, and that day I'm interviewing a Colombian, and he wanted to bring his wife in the interview. I've never had anybody ask to bring their spouse in an interview. So there's two things. Then, when they finished the interview talking to him, I turned to her. I said, "What's your name?" She said, "Rasa. I'm from Iran. Met Gus in Toronto." I said, "Well," and I'm being polite now, just killing time. "Well, what do you do, Rasa?" She says, "I'm a holistic doctor." I said, "I've never met a holistic doctor in my life." So I hold my book and I said, "Maybe I should cut back on my sugar." And she looked at me, my face, my big feet, and she said, "Rich, you should try a detox." I said, "What's that?" She said, 21 days, no sugar, very low carbs, no booze, no processed food. I said, "All right, I'll try it." And the first 7 days were hell because when you're detoxing a poison
Yeah.
like sugar, you feel like crap. I had to leave the gym twice, couldn't finish my workouts, not feeling good. But by day 7, the energy popped up
Wow.
and my feet didn't swell that day and they never swelled afterwards. I mean, I couldn't believe it. But day 21, I've dropped 22 pounds, 10 kilos. My energy's through the roof. I'm feeling great. Aches and pains went away. My blood pressure dropped 30 points. And I said, what the hell just happened? So I immediately started researching on the internet. And thank God for the internet because I was able to, I found Dr. Robert Lustig, his famous video with 22 million views about sugar. And I started reading other excerpts and and I said, and I went to my doctor. I said, why didn't you tell me? Why do I have to take all these pills? All you tell me is quit eating sugar. And I've gotten doctors off sugar and processed foods. I've got my dentist off sugar and processed foods. But it led to 8 years of discovery. And I published my book last September. And what you just said, I've ever learned a lot since I published the book, which we can get into today. But that's what happened. You talk about rabbit holes. Well, when you got into it.
Yeah. Exactly. And your thing is, okay, it's just one topic. I'm going to go deeper into that topic. And then suddenly you're like, okay, this is going to diverge into 3 other topics. Let me go into those. And then suddenly they diverge into others. And then you're like, oh my God, was I living behind a rock all this time? Yeah.
Well, yeah. Yep, that's it.
Yeah, and unfortunately, I think the society is just set up in such a way that they really don't want to make it so accessible and so easy for people to know the truth, yet to really to have that healthy lifestyle and to thrive and to be healthy. I just always try to think about this over and over again. Is it on purposely set up, or is it just by sheer coincidence that it was set up that way, or is it just because of greed and money that we have so much sugar and so many products out there? What has been your experience while you were investigating about this?
Well, you bring up a really good point, and here's some of the rabbit holes. Let me do two of them.
Yeah,
The first thing I wanted to do, and nobody else has done this in their books, by the way. I wrote my book, Killing You Softly.
yeah.
You know how sugar's killing us. It's on Amazon.
I love the title and I love the cover.
Well, thank you. And half of this face, is a woman,
Yeah.
and we can talk later why that is.
Okay.
One of the things I did, nobody else really has done this, but I'm trying to make this book where people understand it and why it happened and how it happened. And mankind, Homo sapiens, have been around for about 200,000 years.
Mm.
And for the first 199,400 years, they didn't eat sugar. There wasn't around.
Yeah.
It wasn't there. And our bodies, as they developed over 200,000 years, were not set up to eat sugar. Sugar has no value at all to the human body, nothing. That's the first thing. It first came around in medieval times, and it was very expensive, very hard to make. The only people who could afford it were the dukes, the bishops, the kings, the rich merchants. And you see pictures of them with big fat faces. They got gout, they're sick. They didn't know it was sugar.
Yeah.
But it didn't go mainstream until they started processing it about 150 years ago. And really, it never went really mainstream until after the Second World War because of sugar rationing in World War One, World War Two. So it really went in to our food system in the United States, where they started developing processed food, fast food, TV dinners in the 50s. And that's when I was a kid. So I'm the first generation of sugar addicts in the world. The first generation came out of the
Yeah.
States in the 50s. The United States is now third generation sugar addicts. The rest of the world is first and second generation. But the United States is the furthest along on this path to unhealthiness and death. So the second rabbit hole, though, was I had to figure out why sugar, what it was sugar and processed foods and what it does to our health is the biggest cover up in human history.
Wow.
Now, it's interesting is how much of that was greed and deception and lies. A lot of it, and a lot of this I covered in my book. But the first lies they started out was when they said fat's bad for you and sugar's fine. That was started in the 1960s because a guy named John Yudkin out of Britain
Mm.
put out a book in the 60s about the perils of sugar. And it got slammed and buried by the establishment.
Yeah.
And they came out, a guy named Ansel Keys wrote a book about fat as the cause. And everybody believed that for 40 or 50 years. Just mass destruction. And poor Yudkin, they took away his honorariums, they took his office away from the college. And I mean, he's like, just buried this poor guy. And yet he was the first one to figure it out. But the cover ups have been massive, and the lies. The other lies, calorie in and calorie out, you're not disciplined. It's like just fat, bad for you. And then they, in the United States, developed the food pyramid, which everybody followed. The worst eating regimen in the history of mankind.
Yeah.
They said, eat all the stuff at the bottom, the grains, the white stuff, the cereals, all the stuff with sugar. And they said, don't eat red meat, butter, and eggs. So that was a big surprise to me was the cover-ups. And I go in a lot of detail in my book. We can talk more about them, but it's just amazing because people do not know the real truth, and it's still today hidden from them. So basically, we're getting bad advice from industry, from governments, and I go in a lot of details in my book, and I can cover a lot more of that as we talk. But it's a huge cover up, and it's to me the most important issue in the United States and soon to be for the entire world.
Yeah. And so far, if what I've seen that the standard American diet, it's a perfect abbreviation, just a SAD diet. It was derived from that pyramid. And I think the pyramid, really, if you look at it now, it's actually the wrong way to advise the Americans on how to go ahead with their food choices. Could you tell us a bit more about that?
Well, yeah, I can. And unfortunately, it's not in my book, but I love to talk about it. The reason who gave us the food pyramid is the USDA, United States Department of Agriculture. And they had this dietetic committee or group. There's about 25 people they use for advice for the pyramid and even today for setting subsidies for food. Well, those people, 80% are compromised. They're on the payroll or getting money or grants or research grants or perks from big food processing companies. So there's
Wow.
definitely so many conflicts of interest in the United States government. This is just one example of many. So now we're getting this bad advice, on the food pyramid. And then they set up the subsidies.
Mhm.
And the United States gives a lot of money for subsidies for their farmers.
Mm.
82% of subsidies are for wheat, corn, soya, sugar, and rice to some degree. Well, that's the stuff that processed food companies take to make processed food. And they strip all the nutrients out. So it's not even food.
Yeah.
You might as well be eating cardboard. And they're getting it cheap. And the USDA subsidizes organic fruits and vegetables 0.4%. So the government, with taxpayer money, is spending 200 times more on stuff that's killing us
Mm.
instead of stuff that's making us healthy. That's just the beginning. It gets worse as I get into it. That's just a start.
Oh my God. Wow. So that was, I think, one of the first rabbit holes that one can really dig deeper into. And somehow, as a consumer, I was always in the opinion that the government is there to protect me. They're there to really take care of us as the citizens, that whatever is in the supermarket, whatever is in the drugstore, it has been already proven that everything is fine. And then somehow I start learning more and more about all these discoveries that I think, hey, but that cannot be. I thought all of this is being tested and proven that's good for us. That's why they're selling it to children and I mean, could you tell us more about how many products do we find in the supermarket that contain sugar?
Well, I can't speak for Europe. I know it's not as bad as the States, but I can tell you the States, I can tell you right here in Colombia what's going on.
Hmm.
But it's about 75% of the products in the supermarket
Wow.
have sugar or processed. And basically, it's sort of what's inside. If you go to the outside, you're pretty safe. That's for the fruits, the vegetables, the meat, the poultry, the fish, the eggs, nuts. It's all out there.
Yeah.
But this thing has expanded. This processed food business has expanded and expanded. And do you know who the biggest investors in processed food companies were in the 80s and 90s?
Hmm. Not really.
Tobacco companies in the United States.
Oh my God.
Once they saw the handwriting on the wall, because it took the United States about 40 years to finally get people, understand what's going on. And they were suing them. So they started moving their money into processed foods. The largest leverage buyout in the United States in the 90s was RGR Nabisco, bought by a tobacco company. They bought General Foods, they bought Kraft. And what they did is they took one addictive substance, nicotine, and moved it into another addictive substance, sugar. And they went from Joe Camel. I used to smoke the little fake,
Yeah.
candy cigarettes. And they went from Joe Camel to Tony the Tiger and Captain Crunch, using the same marketing tactics to get the kids hooked, get people addicted. Same stuff. It's criminal.
Yeah. Absolutely. Wow. I think I've seen somewhere on your book that you say that it's comparable with cocaine. Is that true? That you can really compare sugar with cocaine, that it's so deadly?
I've read 35 books on this subject, about sugar, processed foods, chronic disease, all this stuff. And I'm the only one to put this chart together. I have a chart with cocaine and sugar and all the different characteristics. They're basically the same thing. They both stimulate dopamine. They can both give you pleasure. They're both white. They both can be smoked. Both can be chewed. Both come from a plant. Both are processed. Both can be used socially. Both an original form of Coca-Cola. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. But at least with cocaine, you can lose weight. You can't with sugar. So it has one redeeming benefit. It's expensive,
Yeah.
but it has been proven that sugar is more addictive to the human beings than cocaine. It's proven.
That's so crazy. And then once we are addicted to it, what are all of those health deficits that we will have from sugar? I'm sure you have a long list, but what are the top ones that come to your mind?
The health issues?
The health issues, yes.
Well, first of all, let's just take the United States. Last year, we spent $4.3 trillion on healthcare. 4.3 trillion. That's more money than the next 10 countries combined. It makes it the third biggest GDP in the world after
Yeah.
China and Japan. Now, of that 4.3 trillion, about 80% of that is for chronic disease. That's stuff you can put in your mouth. It's caused by what you eat. Chronic disease is, obesity, diabetes, coronary heart disease, chronic kidney disease, cancer, depression, Alzheimer's. It's a massive
Wow.
list.
Wow.
And this is the stuff that's killing us. In the United States right now, with all the money we spend, where would you guess we rank worldwide in life expectancy? Number two, number three, number four, five? Take a guess.
Yeah, I would say the normal citizen would think that US ranks pretty high because of the high technology and all the
Yeah,
knowledge that they have. But I have read some stuff, so I assume not so high in the list, so probably like 40 something, probably.
47.
Wow.
We're tied with Cuba right now, I think, but we're dropping. We've lost 7 of the last 8 years. We've dropped. So we're living shorter, but we're spending more time with doctors and hospitals. Back in the 70s and 80s, we were spending like 10 years doctors, hospitals. Now it's 13 years. So we're sicker longer and dying quicker
Yeah.
because of what we're eating. Because in the United States today, people are getting approximately 70% of their calories from processed foods.
Wow.
70%. And sugar and processed foods have no nutritional value. In fact, they do so many bad things. They're the precursors to chronic disease. And
Yeah.
the
Wow.
cover-ups are huge. But you're talking about big food, big pharma, and big health. They're making $5 trillion. They're making more money than
Yeah.
anybody in the world, and they don't want anything to change. They control the United States government and the health agencies and the Congress. I can go into
Yeah.
details on that. A lot of it's in my book.
Yeah. And that's why for them, it's not to their interest that you die from it so quickly. It's not to their interest that you're healthy. For them, it's interesting where you're in the middle, yeah, like in that gray zone where you're just about, you're sick enough, but not so sick yet to die so quickly. So that's where they make the most money out of their clients, I would say.
Well, you touch on a good point, Juan, because the name of my book is Killing You Softly.
Hmm.
It could be killing you sweetly or killing you slowly, but softly sort of encompasses all those. So
Yeah.
you're right, it doesn't kill you right away. But the most valuable commodity that our rigged system in the States has for health is a sick kid.
Hmm.
Now
Yeah,
you're talking 30, 40, 50 years of income for the big pharma and big health.
exactly.
So big food gets us sick, and the big pharma, big health make all the money treating us. And the doctors, do you know what percent of doctors are trained in nutrition in the United States?
Well, that one I did hear through my previous research. It's scary. It's something like 2% roundabout.
Now, less than one. You're being generous. In fact, 80% of the medical schools in the United States don't even offer a nutrition course.
Wow.
Do you know why this is? If you or your listeners want to Google allopathic medicine, John D. Rockefeller,
Oh,
allopathic, Allopathic, just Google it. I didn't make this up.
yeah.
In terms of today's dollars, he's the richest man ever in history. Okay. It's worth almost $500 billion. When they were breaking up his oil empire, he discovered a way that he could make more money by getting involved with pharmaceuticals and the application of oil in the pharmaceuticals. So he brought in a German scientist named Abraham Fluxner, and they come up with this idea of allopathic medicine, where they're going to treat people with pills for everything. And they immediately started poo-pooing Eastern medicine, allopathic medicine, preventive medicine, all that stuff. And they started giving money to colleges, universities, AMA, and that became the advent of Western medicine. So doctors are purposely
Mm.
trained to give out pills to treat the symptoms of sugar addiction. When all they got to do is say, hey, why don't you just go home and change your diet? Here's what I want you to start eating. Don't eat sugar or processed foods. But nobody makes any money on that except the farmer.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why, if I think now about it, it makes sense again that the big pharma is supporting so many of these universities who are putting the doctors through the program, because they're just making more of these doctors who are really going to be promoting their medicine for all the future patients that are coming up.
You're 100% right. In fact, Big Pharma is the biggest donors to medical schools in terms of their grants, their research, the money, donations, and they're involved on their curriculums, they're involved in the boards. So they have a huge control and influence on the curriculums, just like they have a control of the United States federal health agencies. So I'm not making this stuff up. This is all
Yeah.
true, and you can research it. They keep a lid on. Let me. Here, you may not know this. There's 200 countries in the world that have television. All right.
Okay.
Only two allow big pharma to advertise direct to the consumer,
Wow.
United States being one of them. Now, why does big pharma advertise to the consumers in the United States? Most people think to sell pills. No, no. I mean, that's a byproduct.
Yeah.
Big pharma is the biggest advertiser in the United States in legacy media, newspaper, newsprint, cable, you name it, they're the biggest.
Mm.
New York Times, CNN, Fox, all of them. They're doing this to control the messenger.
Oh, wow.
That way, nobody says anything bad about Big Pharma because Big Pharma is paying for those executives' colleges for the kids and their mortgages and everything else. So,
Mm.
oh, I can't say anything bad about Big Pharma.
Wow. That's so twisted the way it's built up. And it's so sad, because if I think about the families, yes, how many people have already lost their lives and having sick children, and the worst thing is not just that one loses their life at the end or that it gets shorter, but the fact that you're suffering all these years, yeah, that you have a child that is already in his teenager, so maybe even before becoming a teenager is already suffering with all kind of diseases. And that's where I think that there's no way of how I can understand how somebody can build up a business model that way, that they're going to make more profits out of this kind of society. Yeah.
Juan, it's in my mind, it's criminal.
Yeah.
Let me make you feel even worse if I could. In the United States, healthcare is our fastest growing industry. We're growing faster than AI.
Wow.
And 74% of Americans are now overweight or obese. But in my book, I have a chapter called Killing Our Kids. Let me put it this way. Here's a headline you've never seen, but if I was president of the United States, I'd make sure it gets out every front page. Today's youth, the kids in the United States today, will be the first generation in history of the 250-year Republic of the United States to not outlive their parents.
Wow.
50% of our kids are overweight or obese. 77% of young adults can't qualify for military service. 50% of American adults have diabetes or prediabetes. 30% of American teens have prediabetes or diabetes. And we had that in 1950 was 1% before the sugar hit. That's a 300% increase. Autism in 1950, when I was just a kid, it was 1 in 25,000 kids. Today it's 1 out of 36.
Yeah.
I mean, this is no coincidence. I know correlation is not causation, but it's so obvious when you get into it. 18% of kids have fatty liver disease. That was formerly just for alcoholics.
Yeah.
20% of the ads on Nickelodeon, the number one show for kids, has processed food and sugar advertising. 25% of American women are on STRs, antidepressants. Young adult cancers are up 79%. 40% of 18-year-olds, 40% of up to 18, by the time they're 18, have had mental health diagnosis. The United States now has the highest infant and maternal mortality rate in the entire developed world. 15% of high school students in the United States are on Adderall. Now, Adderall was developed by the Nazis, to help the troops stay awake, and then they started having all these psychosis problems. I mean, when I was growing up, there's never a kid on Adderall.
Yeah.
And then you look at all the conflicts. I mean, 80% of FDA, our Food Department of Agriculture, is like the FDA is our number one group for health states. And 80% of their other money and their grants are coming from big pharma. Oh, another one. 70% of bankruptcy in the United States come from medical bills.
Wow. Yeah. Even if one goes further, to think that every individual, every person has their gifts and their talents. And if they have no health, they will have no power and no possibility to put their talents and their mission into life, because they're too consumed in trying to get healthy themselves. And they're not maybe even strong enough or healthy enough to be tackling their goals and visions that they have for their life. So there's another big potential that I see that it's getting lost, because if you're healthy, then you have 1,000 goals to achieve. But if you're not healthy, there's only one goal that you have to achieve, and that's try to get your health back. And therefore, I'm so grateful that there are people like you who can really put the truth out there and to show people that sometimes the answer is right there, right in front of our nose. And we just have to do simple changes and like removing sugars and getting away from any kind of processed foods and perhaps even alcohol. Is this also one of the things one should stay away from, right?
Yeah, well, I do talk about this in the book.
Mm-hmm.
Alcohol does, part of it does convert to sugar. Part of it's metabolized, but part of it converts to sugar. So what I recommend, I don't say you got to quit, but I say red wine in moderation.
Yeah.
At least with red wine, you have something positive. You got the resveratrol, and so you know, I'm trying to be an example. I'm age 80, my health's perfect, and I take no medication, nothing.
Wow.
And I did this by quitting sugar and processed food 8 years ago.
Yeah.
And my book is set up to get people, I'm trying to keep it simple for people. And I walk them through all the steps about sugar, how bad it is, to cover up the corruption, what it does to you, everything else. But at the very end, I'm just saying, hey, try to do what I did. Just take 21 days and detox. No sugar, no processed foods, no booze, 21 days, and see what happens. You're going to live for 30,000
Yeah.
days. Just take 21 and have a life-changing experience. Because what you just talked about, I mean, it's like we're depriving ourselves of energy and positivity and happiness and everything else. We can turn that around in a heartbeat. In a heartbeat.
Yeah.
You know it, but people just don't believe it. They are addicts, and they need to hear it from a lot of different people.
Yeah.
But the only reason I'm doing this is not to make any money. I'm doing it because to give back. I was saved by a miracle, and I want people to experience what I'm experiencing. And the last quarter of my life has now been my best quarter. So it doesn't have to be the worst quarter. It can be a great quarter.
That is so fantastic. And after seeing your challenge that you put out there, the 21-day challenge, my wife said the other day, now that we set up this podcast, 10 days ago, my wife said, hey, you know what? I'm going to start today. And now she's on day 10. So it's really interesting that you mentioned that after day 7 that you started feeling that your energy was coming back or that you had more energy than normal. And my wife now is on day 10 and she's like, wow, my energy is amazing. And she's
Wow.
it's
Good.
so just a couple days and it's like what a miracle. Yeah, she said that there's no coffee, no type of Red Bull, nothing that can give her that amount of energy like she has right now. Yeah, just after 10 days. Yeah.
No, good for her. I mean, it's so true. And one other thing too that I talk about in the book, but it's like that people got to understand sugar. This is part of the deception. There's 50 different names for sugar.
Mm.
They do this on purpose. They don't really want you to know it's sugar. It could be dextrose, like lactose. It could be natural cane sugar. It could be sucrose. They got all these different names, 50 of them,
Yeah. Wow.
but all of them have something in common. They have two bad things in them, fructose and glucose. That's what sugar is. It's two molecules. And both of them do set things bad to us differently. Fructose being the biggest offender, but both of them, you don't need them. They don't do
Mhm.
you any good at all. People don't know it. They don't understand it.
Exactly. So if there's a listener thinking about, okay, I'm going to start reducing my sugar, but normally they would think of the easy stuff like, well, maybe the Snickers bars, maybe my cereal, but there are other places where sugar is hidden. So could you give us some other ideas where else that they could find sugar that they never thought about?
Well, okay. First of all, sugar is everywhere. And if something has a label on it, there's a good chance it's got sugar in it. So you ought to read the label. It's a
Yeah.
95% chance it's got sugar. I mean, sugar like salad dressings, they got sugar in them. Now, if you make your own with vinegar and olive oil and lime juice and basil and oregano and some Dijon mustard, fine. But salad dressings are a big offender. Bread, a lot of bread. Some of the bread at the grocery store has sugar
Yeah.
added.
Wow.
Fruit juices. I mean, a glass of orange juice has as much sugar almost as a Coca-Cola. Uh,
That's crazy. And then you see all this nice marketing, yeah, where they put all these fruits in this fruit juice, and you think that you're doing something good for your children, yeah, serving them the fruit juice.
yeah, no, it's insidious. It's really sad, and we have a stacked deck against us. But you mentioned about cutting back on
Hmm.
things.
Hmm.
My mantra is don't eat poison.
Yeah.
Sugar is poison to your system. And when you eat a poison, it goes to the liver. Now, fructose component can't be metabolized, so it has to go to your liver. And when it goes to your liver, it creates a lot of bad byproducts, leads to inflammation, can lead to so many different things, and also lowers your energy because it has to need energy. And what happens? It sends a signal out, I need more energy, it makes you overeat.
Yeah.
Plus, it puts leptin to sleep, which is a hormone that tells you're full. So fructose is doing a lot of bad stuff and has a lot of bad side effects that can lead to inflammation and diabetes and chronic disease. Glucose, the other component, when you have excess glucose in your bloodstream, now you're getting insulin resistance, can lead to diabetes, and it stores that excess glucose into fat. The insulin does this. Now you're getting fatter. Both fructose and glucose can compromise your immune system. And then your poor gut biome.
Mm.
When you eat sugar and processed foods, it doesn't feed your gut. It doesn't protect your liver. It doesn't support your brain. And when you don't feed the gut biome, those trillion bacteria in there, they get hungry. What are they going to eat? They start eating into your intestinal wall, into the muesli there, and then you get leaky gut.
Yeah.
And now all this stuff pours into your system, compromise your immune system, definitely screws up your brain. Alzheimer's is being called diabetes 3.
Wow.
So this is all the stuff that happens when you eat sugar. I don't say cut back. I say quit it. I don't want any sugar. I don't even want it now.
Yeah.
I have no desire for sugar. It would actually make me nauseous. That's the good news if you quit it. But don't try to do it. It's not trying to quit smoking, go halfway quit, or just cut down on your cocaine.
Yeah.
Just quit eating poison.
Exactly. It's just the fact of just knowing. Once you have the knowledge, then you know, okay, is it good or is it not good? It's not something in between. And if you know it's not good, then hey, why do I need to do that to myself if I know it's not going to bring me any long-term positive effects? Well, one has other alternatives. If one would like to have something sweet, if one says, oh, I have a sweet tooth, I think there are other alternatives that one could use. In my case, and that's maybe my question to you, is it okay to eat, for example, medjool dates? Would that be okay?
Well, your fruit. Let's take fruit.
Yeah.
Fruit's sweet, right?
Yeah.
You can eat fruit.
Great.
The reason you can eat fruit is because fruit has fiber, soluble, non-soluble fiber. What that does, it actually creates a lattice network from your throat all the way down to your gut, and it coats the lining, which slows or eliminates the absorption of the fructose.
Okay.
So, and it also is providing fiber for the biome. So
Yeah.
you're feeding your gut, and you're not getting these insulin spikes. So fruit's fine. That'll help. There's some natural sweeteners that are good. Monk oil is my favorite. Stevia to a second degree, and a little bit of honey now and then is okay.
That's really good because people think, oh, if I need to stop eating sugar, then they think that they will not be able to taste anything sweet anymore. And that's exactly the wrong way of thinking. You have to know, hey, there's enough out there. You got so much fruit. Some people don't even know how many different types of fruits are out there and how delicious they can taste. And if you're still into that, I would say, sugar phase, then sometimes your taste buds are a little bit altered. So if you try to eat fruits, it might not be that tasty. So yeah, it's okay. But that happened to me, for example, when I went plant-based 10 years ago. I almost zero with my sugars as well. And then suddenly my taste buds started changing, and I'm like, wow, the food is just tasting so much better. It's like, an explosion of rainbows just going in my brain. Yeah.
You, you know, before 8 years ago, back before I knew all this, I didn't eat fruit. You know why?
Because it didn't taste?
It wasn't sweet
Yeah.
enough for me. It was now it tastes too sweet almost. I
Yeah.
thought, whoa. So I can really taste it,
Yeah.
the difference. But look, this thing about needing sweetness or needing sugar, if you quit it, you want it. And fruit's plenty. I mean, it's more than enough.
Yeah.
So it's just you got to get the body back to the way it used to be, get it healthy, because this is not rocket science.
Yeah.
If you want to live to be if you want to, I've already sent an invitation to my 100th birthday party. Okay, so I'm serious.
Fantastic.
But if you want to lead a good life, you just got to do really three things: just eat real food, and sugar and processed food is not food.
Yeah.
Eat real food, exercise, and sleep. Now, if you're eating sugar and processed foods, you're probably not going to exercise because you're gaining weight and your energy is going to be lower. You don't feel like it.
Yeah.
And then you're not going to sleep well. So by not eating real food, you've compromised the three basic things, the key to long life. That is not complicated. That is not rocket science, but it's real.
Yeah, that's right. Sometimes things can be so simple and people just try to overcomplicate things and they come up with all different types of diets and they say, look, this is the diet named this way, then this is another book on a different diet. And people seem to be overwhelmed when you look into the internet to say, well, what type of diet do I need to do in order to have a great body or to lose weight or whatever goals one has? But the answer could be so simple. Yeah, it's just let go of sugar, let go of processed foods. And that's already like 90% of your questions have been answered.
You'll notice in my book, I don't even mention the word diet, except to talk about the diet industry.
Hmm.
In the United States, it's an $85 billion a year industry, diets. If diets work, there'd be no industry.
Yeah.
So don't diet. Don't worry about a diet.
Yeah.
I didn't count calories. I ate all I wanted for 21 days and I dropped 22 pounds in a month or 21 days. But you don't diet, just don't eat poison.
Yeah.
Don't eat the stuff that's making you sick,
Exactly.
and you'll be fine. You'll be fine. But you got to understand when companies are making trillions of dollars, that greed and that money and that avarice is going to affect the way they conduct their business, the way they influence governors, and the way they lie to us.
Yeah.
And trust me, that's true. I mean, I could go on for hours about what's happening in the United States. FDA, the
Mm.
CDC, the NIH, all of them have been totally compromised by big money interests.
Time for a quick break to mention that the sponsor of this podcast is Wave Business Excellence Footprint, a digital training company deeply committed to your career development, personal growth, and the well-being of our precious planet. Dive into a wealth of knowledge with over 20 courses available on our website, www.wave-bef.com, tailored for both managers and employees aspiring to become tomorrow's leaders. Check out the testimonials on our website. The results speak for themselves. During my time in the corporate world, I often wished I had the opportunity to access such courses at the beginning, making my learning experience quicker. I'm quite curious about the insurance companies because initially I always thought that insurance companies don't have it very good because they have so many ill people, so the insurance companies have to then pay more. But somehow I think they also have some type of win on this situation. And could you maybe clarify that a bit to us? How's the situation for the insurance companies?
What you got to understand is, as mentioned, the three big culprits in the United States is big food,
Mm,
which is processed food, which they've spread around the world now. Because around the world is now first and second generation cigarettes. Colombia is now second generation. I got back from Thailand last November, and now I see fat Thais, fat Japanese, fat Asians, fat Singaporeans. I mean, it's like the problem though is like as this stuff spreads around the world. I mean, how are we going to learn the truth? You know,
yeah.
it's so covered up because you got people making trillions of dollars keeping us sick. So the big food industry with their processed food feeds the people in the states, and then big health and big pharma make all the money. Big pharma, obviously, with the pills, but big health is interesting. It's the hospitals, it's the doctors, it's the PBMs, the pharmacy benefit managers, and it's the insurance companies.
Mm,
But they're all making money because all insurance companies do is keep raising the rates. Insurance is very expensive in the
true.
United States.
Yeah.
I mean, you talk about some people spending thousands of dollars a month, for their health insurance, or the companies are spending that.
Yeah.
So they're all making money from sick people that big food is making sick,
Yeah.
and they all have their own vested monetary interests. And yet now there is a movement going on, and this has started about 10 years ago. I call Dr. Robert Lustig the godfather of the anti-sugar movement. He's sort of the leader, but there's so many good doctors out there now fighting this fight. And, Dr. Richard Johnson, Dr. Lufkin, Dr. Perlmutter. I mean, there's so many that get it. Their voices are heard. And if anybody's going to read a book other than mine from your audience, read Good Energy by Dr. Casey Means. She and her brother wrote this book. Dr. Casey she was number one in her class at Stanford Medical School, went into ENT surgical, very high level, just very, very lucrative business. And she finally figured out the problem is not all these surgeries, interventions, it's what they're eating. And she's dropped her practice, now does preventive medicine. And they wrote this book, Good Energy. It's a very good book.
Thank you for that
So,
recommendation. I will be putting that into the show notes together with your book as well so that the listeners can
okay.
click on both of those links. And I think the more information they can get, the better. Knowledge is power, yeah. And then once you put that knowledge into action, that's even more power because then it's not only good to know about it, but to really put it an action plan and to say, what am I going to do now for the future? Especially if we are parents and we have children and they're the new generation that's coming up, and we really need to keep them safe. So if I think of now for the next birthday party, now if we have children, what would be the ideal birthday party for a child?
Well, yeah, I have that chapter in my book, Killing Our Kids. And I talk about how the poor kids don't have a chance because unfortunately the mothers control mainly the diets of the kids, and the mothers love sugar more than the men do. So it's like the fox in the hen house. So these poor kids, they got birthday parties and Christmas parties and Easter and Halloween, all this crap. And they give them all this crap. It's killing them. It's so sad
Yeah.
what's going on there. I have had the good fortune and pleasure to actually meet some parents that had sugar-free kids. And it was an amazing experience.
Wow.
These kids had never eaten sugar, and they're like calm, happy old souls, just almost spiritual. Like I mean, I look at these guys, whoa. But the kids, if we can train them, get them early, they could be our biggest advocates.
Yeah.
I mean, these kids, you put a candy bar and a piece of broccoli, they're going to go for the broccoli. They wouldn't even look at that candy bar.
Yeah.
But for the parties in the future, I mean, you can come up with some. I know kids like guacamole. You can have different veggies with the
Yeah.
guacamole. You can have all kinds of fruit. You can have some watermelon, blueberries. That you can make ice cream from fruit. Without putting sugar in it. That tastes good.
Yeah.
Can get creative. But if we can get these kids healthy and get them off the sugar, when they get hungry, they're going to eat fruit. They'll eat anything because it'll taste so good. I mean, to me, a salad explodes the taste in my
Yeah.
mouth. When I was before eating my sugary days, I never finished my salad. It didn't last. I mean,
Yeah.
you know what it's like. So
Yeah,
it's
and if I think about when my wife does an ice cream here at home, she usually has bananas that are chopped up and put into the freezer. And then whenever she does the ice cream, she takes those frozen chopped up banana pieces and puts it into the food processor. And then she makes a super nice ice cream. And she doesn't put anything in there, no sugar, no nothing. And it just tastes like so amazing that the kids that come to
yeah,
visit us, they're like, this is better than anything else that they have tried. And we're like, yeah, and this is actually even good for you. So it can be so simple. Yeah.
yeah. It's just we're up against a stacked deck, my friend. You mentioned about knowledge is power. I argue sometimes people say, well, we don't need more restrictions on what we eat. Everybody should have a free choice. I'm fine with free choice, but let's make it informed
Yeah.
choice. Informed.
Exactly.
And one of the chapters I cover, I have a solution, and I call it the tobacco template. In the United States, when I was a kid watching black and white TV, they used to have doctors come out smoking cigarettes, promoting Lucky Strikes and Camels, saying this is better for you, better for your health. That's what we had for 50 years. It took that long before we finally got them, to reduce smoking in the states from 42% down to 12.
Yeah.
How we do that? Label it, warnings unlabeled, take it out of the
Hmm.
schools, out of the hospitals, out of the public places, restrictions on purchase, tax the hell out of it, public service announcements, get the doctors involved, get the government involved. And it worked. And we could do the same thing with sugar and sugar
Yeah.
products, the same exact template, phase in over time, but just give people informed consent because right now they don't have it. They're just sugar addicts
Yeah.
with no knowledge.
Exactly. If I think about every time I was bringing our daughter to the grandparents, and I was already thinking like, oh my gosh, the grandparents are going to be stuffing them with candies, and they're thinking, they're doing the best, and they're just being the best grandparents ever. And I'm thinking, dear grandparents, do you know what you're doing to that poor child? I think if they would know, if they would see what we see today in the cigarette boxes, yeah, and all those images that you can see how when somebody has cancer in their lungs or anything else. So if you put that in candy bars, then I'm sure maybe the grandmother will not be buying that for their grandson or grandchild. Wow,
No,
crazy.
but we each got to do our part because this is not easy. Changing tobacco was huge task, but the sugar thing and process is much bigger. It's 10 or 20 times bigger.
Yeah,
But there is a grassroots movement. Each of us need to touch somebody else and get somebody else educated and involved because as that spreads, but it's going to take time, but it's going to be accelerated because of the internet. I mean, all information is there. It's all there, thank God. And if you're really lazy, just go to Chat GBT and punch in something, ask questions,
exactly.
and you'll see the
Yeah.
answers.
Sometimes you get like the wrong answer. So what I always recommend my listeners to do is to just follow the money. See who published that paper that you're reading. Yeah, was it somebody from a pharma industry? Was it maybe some kind of Coca-Cola or whoever sponsored that article? And then you can say, okay, is this now a reliable source? Maybe let's start digging deeper.
Why is Coca-Cola a member of the American Diabetes Association? I mean, it's you're right. Follow the money.
Yeah,
No, you're exactly right. This is all about money, and they don't care about you or your health. They care about their pocketbooks,
yeah,
and they're not telling you the truth.
exactly.
But you're
And
absolutely right. Follow the money.
And if you're a CEO of one of those companies, then you just think, okay, I got to pay so many employees every year. I need to pay for all of our IT systems and all this kind of stuff. So at the end of the day, their main focus is not about health or not about environment. Their focus is just how do I increase my profit so I can continue, getting my nice bonus, getting my big salary and paying all the managers and having these, 50,000 employees on board. And unfortunately, that's just their main focus. And I'm just so disappointed at the way how companies are run sometimes. And
Somebody's going to have to write a book in that one day, but I don't think they all started with this idea of poisoning the world to make money because prior to 1950, nobody thought sugar was bad for you. There wasn't anything negative, and it wasn't until Judkin's book came out in the 60s that there was any tension. So the sugar got into our system and in the food, and then high fructose corn syrup came in the 70s. By that time, the boat had left the dock. And now you had companies competing and trying to stay ahead and trying to grow, and you got corporate pressure, shareholder pressure. It's like, and I often wonder how many people in these companies really know the truth about what they're doing to humanity. But I'm sure people that work at Coca-Cola, some of them probably drink Coke. I know back in tobacco days, some tobacco executives smoke cigarettes. So obviously they don't all know
Yeah.
or don't care. We just need informed
Yeah,
consent and we
exactly.
need changes. Like I say, the USDA should do 80% subsidies for organic fruit,
Yeah.
vegetables, grass-fed beef, pasteurized chickens and eggs, and soil nourishment replenishing.
Yeah.
And give processed food, other crap, wheat, soya, corn, give that like 0.4%. We just need to reverse it.
That's right.
And there's so many other things we can do. But once we change the supply and demand equation, everything will reverse out. Like we can start having restaurants in the States called McHealth and, Keto King. And, I mean, it
E-
could all happen.
Exactly.
It really could. It's going to take time.
That's right. And it should be also then affordable for all classes and not just to say that to be healthy, you need to have more money in your pocket. It should be, as you said, if you turn it around, health belongs to everybody. Everybody should be healthy and it should not cost us more than what we are paying today for a burger or a hamburger that you say, how can it be if I'm going to have this hamburger from McDonald's and it's so cheap compared to if I would have to go to Whole Foods and get myself something fresh? Why is that going to be more expensive? So this is really, as you mentioned, it has to turn around.
Interesting. The $3+ trillion we're wasting every year on chronic disease, if we reverse that, we could take a tenth of that and feed every person in the United States a free healthy meal 3 times a day. I mean, seriously.
Yeah, that's a good
Again,
one.
it's not rocket science.
Yeah,
You just gotta change the supply and demand and educate people, inform people, and get everybody in sync, to move forward because there's no way to be happy in life if you're sick.
exactly.
It affects you so many different ways.
That's right.
And it's so sad to watch, but that's what's happening in the United States. What you see in the States is going to be the rest of the world if we don't stop this. It just happened. The United States started it first. And I'll give you another example. Because of the compromised immune system of people in the States and the obesity and the chronic disease, we have 4.2% of the world's population. And with all the money and all the resources and all the knowledge, we ended up with 16% of the world's deaths due to COVID,
Wow.
just because our system is so compromised. And it's like, it's so sad. Yeah.
Wow. And now I'm super, super curious from the cliffhanger that we had at the beginning of this conversation, which was about the cover of your book. You mentioned it's half woman, and I'm very curious, why did you choose it that way, that the cover is half of the face of a woman?
I love and adore women, but they're sort of the gatekeepers in a way. They influence what the kids eat and the husbands eat and the boyfriends eat and the girlfriends eat and the friends eat. And we've got to get them on board. But unfortunately, they seem to be the biggest offenders. I mean, you try to take a woman's chocolates away, and you got a fight in your hand. I mean, this is something serious.
Yeah.
They call it comfort food. It all started going back to the 50s. Now, my mom was pregnant with me in 1944, and she actually smoked cigarettes and drank alcohol. Didn't know. They didn't even know that. But she was eating real food. So I fortunately survived it. The women today don't smoke, don't do drugs. They're not drinking alcohol, but what they're eating is comfort foods. They're eating
Yeah.
pizzas and hamburgers and cheeseburgers and drinking cokes and ice cream. You name all that stuff.
Mm.
Comfort food. And now our baby is being born pre-diabetic, obese, and addicted to sugar right out of the womb and on a pathway to a crappy life and not outliving their parents. So that's the realities of the situation. Now, what I want the women to take charge of this thing, and I'm challenging them. Please, and just take the 21 days and then be an influence, please. And I understand, there's some hormonal differences. I know certain times of the month they tend to have these cravings, but the cravings, just eat some almonds or pistachios or macadamias. You'll get through this, but they've got to do it. I mean, the women are the key here. So I'm appealing to them.
If you look at a lot of families, women are really the decision makers when it comes to what is going to be bought in the supermarkets, what are we going to allow the kids to eat or not to eat. And
Right.
therefore, all of the things that the kids are targeted by marketing companies, where they put all the advertisements in the supermarkets in a certain level so the kids have access to it and they can see it and they can tell, hey mom, I would like that, that candy bar comes with that toy with it. Yeah, and the mom is then the one who has to lead by example to say, well, I'm not going to buy you that, but if you want, we can get you maybe that pineapple, or we can get something else. We can get a nice banana ice cream that I'll make you at home instead of buying you that toy that's attached with that candy bar. So it's really the knowledge that the mom has to have, with that awareness that they can really protect their family.
But but if the mom is eating that's comfort food, then she's not going to pass it on to kids. In fact, what parents tend to do when a kid is really good, what do? They give them a reward. They give them a dessert. They give them candy. And
Yeah.
if a kid's bad, they give them candy to shut them up. I mean, they're killing
Yeah.
the kids either way. It's just, but the moms, they've got to take charge of this thing. But I know what we're up against. I mean, when I got my dentist, told him about the sugar and what happened, and he changed. In fact, he went more extreme than I am in terms of anti-aging and getting healthy. His wife is a dermatologist who I had to use a couple of times. And when on my second time with her, she's told me she was pre-diabetic. A beautiful gal, early 40s. And I said, Maria Stella, you've got to quit eating sugar. And she looked at me like I'd stabbed her in the heart, like I was crazy. And now they fight because she gives crap to the kids that he don't want to eat sugar.
Yeah.
So there's
Yeah.
a battle at the family level,
Wow. Yeah.
But just the women have got to run with this thing.
Wow. Yeah, I hear so many, well, including my wife. She says that she's a chocoholic, and every time she has dinner, she knows that she's going to have her one or two little pieces of chocolate. But I'm so happy now that she did this challenge, that she's on day 10, as I mentioned, and that she's already saying that she's feeling so much better. Yeah, and
Well, what's really good for people to do if they can do it is get some blood work done, lab work done
yeah.
before you do your detox
Hmm.
and look at your A1C and your glucose levels and all your basic markers, uric acid,
Hmm.
and then see what happens 21 days later. Because my blood pressure dropped from 160/100 down to 130 over 80. I'm now 125 over 75. And it's like,
Wow.
I don't take any pills,
Amazing.
you know? So this is
And
good. You're right. This is going to be great to document this with her.
that's right.
And if you're going to have that little piece of chocolate, make sure it's at least 75, 80% cacao. Because the more cacao, the less sugar.
That's right. In my business, I do a lot of projects and I do a lot of statistics with companies and so forth. So there's like this bell curve that you see, that a lot of the statistical data points are in the middle of the bell curve. And then on the sides, you have like very small statistical points. And those are like the outliers. So you're definitely out of range. You're definitely one of those outliers where you can say that with 80, you're not taking any medication. You're feeling great. You are, sharp in your thinking. You have no cloudiness and brain fog. And all of that, it's just like, why are you so out of the norm? Yeah, why are you so not normal like the rest of the society, that first of all, they don't even get to 80. And if they're 80, they're already suffering. Yeah, so I'm so glad that you are one of those outliers, yeah, those statistical, I would say, edges of that bell curve, where you can really say, well, there's something different that this person is doing, and let's see what is it that you're doing. And that's why I'm so grateful that you created this book for all of us to learn more and to put all of that knowledge that you have gathered in all of these years into a nice package. And I think if I would have money, I would just buy pallets of your book and just hand it out to people in the street, and or maybe just stand in front of some corporation of Coca-Cola and just like hand it to the employees when they're at lunchtime and coming back to work, and say, hey, here's the book, I got a present for you. Yeah, they can just take a look at it and start thinking. Yeah.
Well, I wish it were that simple. I'd do it. But, part of the problem is you can take a horse to water, you can't force him to drink. And I've given the book to people who never read it,
Yeah.
you know. So it's like I try to motivate them. I know one guy bought at least 10 copies because he was a diabetic and now he's off insulin. And he did it within 45 days after
Wow.
reading the book. And it's like I've had others. I mean, I've got some pretty good stories, but it's just we're all on this earth together, and I know I've looked at some of your stuff, and it's amazing. What you're saying is so good about performance, energy, happiness, and it's like we're all in this planet together.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, the money interest in our Washington D.C. in the United States does three things to its people: they keep us divided, distracted, and dumbed down. And it's so sad, and so we're not even seeing what's going on. But we got to keep fighting this thing. We can't give up,
Exactly.
because nothing better in life than helping somebody and helping somebody special with health and helping a kid.
Yeah.
Name me something better than that. I don't know what it is.
Absolutely. And that's where I think even that perhaps even the marketing companies, they should be acting more ethical and not just say, hey, I'm getting money from these corporations. I'm going to put out there whatever they want me to put out there. I'll just twist the truth in such a way that people are just going to be buying those products independent if a product is good for our body or for the environment. And that's why I was even thinking, why don't they have more of those ethical marketing companies who say, we're only going to market products that are good for our health and for the environment, and anything else that is not proven good for us, we're not going to market. And I think that would be almost like a good strategy to have, so that we say, hey, who's marketing that? And say, look, if that's a marketing company who's marketing that, then most probably it's a good product. And I don't see sufficient of these type of companies out there yet.
Yeah, but think about who's in the marketing company. There's a 90% chance in the States they have chronic disease and they're a sugar addict. So are they going to see the light? People in general just believe this stuff. I mean, I keep picking on the States, but the States is sort of the leaders, supposedly. But we're the ones now that have the censorship. We're the ones that are the media is controlled by Big Pharma. We're the ones that have the corrupt Washington, D.C. Do you know Big Pharma has 1,860 lobbyists? Lobbyists go around and give out money and trips and incentives and perks. There's only 535 members in Congress. That's 3 to 1. And that's just Big Pharma. The food industry's got a similar amount. You
Crazy.
can't get elected to that Congress unless you're taking their money. And if you say something bad about sugar, you'll never get elected. It's really tough. So most people just don't know. They've been lied to, and now they're addicted.
That's right.
And the last thing somebody wants to hear about is, oh, you shouldn't be eating your pizza, or your Big Gulp, or your Coca-Cola, your ice cream. They don't want to hear that.
Exactly.
If we can touch enough people, sometimes some people are going to start getting it. And you're doing a remarkable job. I mean,
Thank you so
you know,
much, Rich.
got it. We got to keep it up.
I'm just thinking about my dad just went through an open heart surgery about 2 months ago. And I told my dad, ask your doctor, what is it that you need to do to prevent that from ever happening again? First of all, you should have known, what are the things that can prevent from having an open heart surgery. But okay, now that you had one, please ask your doctor what you should do, because, you don't want to get back to the same situation again. You don't want to be doing that again. And he said, well, my doctor didn't say anything. He just said, live your life. And then if you have something, I'll fix you up. It's like, oh my God, no. Yes. So I'm still working on my dad yet. So he says, okay, son, I don't see the white coat. You're not a doctor. That's why if I need a good advice, I need to ask my doctor. So I'm right now really trying my best, to get this through to him and to see how, how I can manage that.
Look, I could go in a lot more detail about the links of sugar and processed foods to heart disease and chronic disease, but let me just give you a little quick one. Again, part of the big lies that doctors are being told. The doctor is going to prescribe your dad statins. Probably already had him on statins, right?
Yeah.
Okay. I've done a lot of research on statins, and it's another boondoggle of a big pharma. Flawed initial studies. Every doctor's pushing it. Most profitable drug they have. I don't take statins. I used to. I don't anymore. Not just because of side effects, because the truth about statins is they don't really help you. They help somebody maybe that's in the middle of just finished a heart condition, maybe he should temporarily on it. But they say statins is going to reduce your LDL, right?
Yeah.
You've heard everybody, LDL is bad, right? First of all, cholesterol is necessary. Cholesterol is what carries our nutrients and all our energy through our system. It's in our brain. It's important. You got to have it. But here's one of the covers of Big Pharma. There's two kinds of LDL. Two, not one, two. One is called small particle SDLDL, and the other is large particle LDL. The large particle is larger and it flows right through the arteries, doesn't stick to them. You get that from eating butter and fats and stuff like that. Doesn't bother you. The small particle can adhere to the arterial walls, and that can cause a buildup, and that can cause a problem. What's the primary cause of small particle LDL? Sugar and processed foods. You quit those, that goes away.
Yeah.
I don't even look at my cholesterol. I don't even care about it. Could care less. You couldn't pay me to take a statin. So, but the doctors aren't trained that way. And plus, they don't even measure for small particle. They can. There are some labs that do it, but that should be the immediate test you do. Let's look at the LDL, see what your small particle is, and see if there is a problem here or not. They don't do it. It's on purpose.
Wow, this is so amazing. All the information that you're giving to me, it's just like some of it I knew, some of it I did not know. So therefore, thanks also for opening my eyes even more. And you have equipped me with many, many more tools that I can now speak with my dad. And I will tell him that he has to listen to this podcast. And as you said, it's so important to be a conscious consumer. Yeah, if there are people out there and say, I still want to eat my chocolate or my sweets or my dessert, but then at least you are doing it consciously. You know that you're not going to do yourself any good. But if you already have the knowledge and you know that's the way it is, then don't complain about it if you have some kind of illness or sickness later on in your life.
Yeah.
And in case they do, then they say, okay, maybe now I know what I need to do to reverse that. So, well, I think a lot of people who are listening to this podcast will be already blown away. But what you have given as information.
After this, I hope we can still just stay in touch because I really love the work you're doing and I like how you've got
Thank you.
there. And I
Yes.
think you're on track.
I would like to be on your 100th birthday, please.
You're invited. And Medellin, I mean, it's
Yeah.
the best city in the world. So Valencia's second best.
That's right. Yeah. And so my final question for our podcast today is, how would you define happiness?
Well, I define it for myself personally. And I know that my spiritual journey really began in 1985 when I accepted Christ in my life. Before that, I was just, sort of agnostic.
Mhm.
So that really helped. I noticed I didn't get depressed after that. But what's really taken me to even a sense a higher level in my journey has just been, especially after I quit the sugar and processed foods, noticed some other changes, much more positive energy. And this sort of links back to serotonin. I mean, serotonin is the key. You want to have serotonin, and 95% of the serotonin is made in our gut.
Yeah.
We don't feed our gut, we're going to compromise the serotonin. If our immune system's compromised, and the depression is just endemic in the world right now. The United States, it's horrible, and it's for what you eat. So happiness to me is just eating real food, exercise, and sleep. And world is fun. And as I said, my closing chapter of my book is I want everybody to have the last quarter of their life to be the best quarter. It's happened to me. I'm having a lot of fun at age 80, and I'm looking forward to 20 more good years.
Fantastic.
I'm just happy.
Yeah.
And it's because by this miracle, I'm eating right and staying healthy, and have the guy upstairs to thank for that.
That's so great. So I'm just calculating now. When you are in your birthday party, when you're 100, then I would be 70 at that point of time. Because I would say 99% sugar free, but I think I'm going to get rid of that rest of that 1%. I don't really need it after this conversation. And so thank you so much for that. It was a fantastic 1 hour that we dedicated here for bringing all this great information out there for our listeners. And again, I'm so grateful for all the things that you have done with your book and the research that you're doing. And I'm sure when you're finding out new things in the future, you will spread that awareness with us as well.
Well, thanks. And if anybody, the easiest way to reach me is just Rich Holman, Medellin, Colombia. And
Okay,
everything's on there. The book, my company, LinkedIn, Facebook, it's all there.
perfect.
But look, I'm just so impressed with you. I said I've done other podcasts, but you've been the most prepared, most understanding, best questions.
Oh, thank you
And
so
I
much.
think you're going to affect real change, Juan. I mean, I really do. So keep up the good work. I'm very impressed.
Thank you so much, Rich, for the great feedback. And I'm so looking forward to perhaps seeing you very soon, maybe in Medellin, or maybe if you travel to Valencia, Spain someday, I'll be happy to receive you here.
Well, if I ever get back to Spain, I'm definitely going there for sure. Okay.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Rich.
All right.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.
As we wrap up today's enlightening conversation with Rich Holman, it's clear that the standard American diet, heavily influenced by the outdated food pyramid, has led to a public health crisis. With government subsidies supporting the production of processed foods rather than nutritious, whole options, we are seeing a rise in chronic diseases directly linked to our diets. Sugar, which has been proven to be highly addictive, is at the center of these health issues, which affects comparable to some of the most harmful substances like cocaine. And what's worse, the healthcare industry, including big food, big pharma, and even insurance companies, profit from our collective poor health, continuing the cycle of chronic illness. But there is hope. By focusing on real food, exercise, and adequate sleep, we can take back control of our well-being. Eliminating sugar from your diet could be the key to experiencing dramatic health improvements, from weight loss to increased energy and improved blood pressure. As a society, we must be aware of how we spread unhealthy eating habits and make the necessary changes to protect our health and the future generations. Thank you for joining us in this crucial discussion. And remember, small, intentional changes in your diet can make a world of difference. Be sure to check the show notes for all the links and details on how to connect with Rich. And now, I would love to know which part of this episode spoke to you the most. Your feedback is incredibly important to my team and me, so please take a moment to rate, subscribe, and share this episode with anyone who might find it valuable. Your support truly inspires me to continue creating content that makes a difference. I can't wait to connect with you again in the next episode. Big hugs, everyone.